Hello everyone, my name is James and welcome back to another, if belated, video where I try my best to pick up my long lost Warhammer hobby. For those of you that don't know, I collected and painted 40k and battle games in Middle-earth models when I was between, I think, 12 and 15 maybe. For Lord of the Rings stuff, most of my models were collected through the awesome bi-weekly, fortnightly? Whatever. Battle Games in Middle-earth magazine. I think it was made by a company called DA.
How do you say Diagostini? Is it Diagostini?
Diagostini. Thanks, MS Paints. Anyways, this video is not about the Lord of the Rings stuff. Today we're going to do some more 40k. And back in the day, when it came to 40k, I never really had like a main army. I do remember I picked up a bunch of Space Marine because they were your main poster boys back in the day and still are for the 40k universe. I had a box of Tyranids. I also picked up some Dark Elder for some reason because they were spiky and edgy. And I was, you know, like 13, 14 and I thought, hey, that's cool. I had no idea about the lore. I don't think this is everything I had that I showed you before, but it's all that I've got left. Maybe some have gone missing. Maybe I sold a few. I don't really remember. But yeah, now that I'm in my 30s and I want to pick up the hobby again, it's time for me to choose the army that I want to collect and paint. To help me do that, I'm going to try and explain a little bit about each main faction in the 40k universe, mostly for my own benefit. But this is all going to be pretty much from the top of my head at the time of writing this script, so it's not going to be very detailed, but it's what I could pull from my brain at the time, so yeah, let's get started. The Imperium of Man. Now, these are supposed to be the relatable faction in the 40k universe because, well, they're human. I do feel pretty human most of the time. Some of the time, I don't know. From a new player's perspective, there are two main armies that you are probably going to collect. That'll be the Guardsmen, or the Astra Militarum, or the Space Marines, otherwise known as the Astartes. Now, I don't know about you, but the Astartes design and aesthetic is absolutely iconic, and there's a reason why 40k is so popular with these guys as their poster boys. These giant behemoths of man are clad in the Emperor's finest armor, wielding the Imperium's most powerful weapons in order to be the absolute bulwark against the horrors of chaos and the heresy of the Xenos scum. Got a bit carried away with myself there. Oh shit. Yeah, they're a bit white-bread in comparison with other factions, and the art depicting them is sort of propaganda-y, if I'm being honest. Like, they're always shown as these absolute angels, I guess, but I guess some of them are called literal angels. Angels of death, blood angels, you know, there's a bunch. But in the lore, it makes sense because the Space Marines, well, the Astartes, are seen as these absolute fucking units, and they are pretty much like angels to the general public of the Imperium. To see one is exceptionally rare, and to see one on the battlefield as a guardsman, then holy fucking shit, you're in some trouble, boy. Because to be in a fight where the Astartes are actually needed is to be in a fight where it's almost a hopeless situation that absolutely cannot be allowed to fail. Basically, boy, you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, and you're pretty much fucked. Especially if you're fighting against chaos, because yeah. If you're fighting against chaos, they're just going to kill you anyways to prevent the spread of even just knowing about chaos. It's fucked up. On the other side of the coin though, when it comes to the Imperium armies, the Guardsmen are pretty much like the Horde army. If Space Marines and the Astartes are the scalpel, the Guardsmen are pretty much the hammer. They are many and numerous in number, and they absolutely overwhelm their opponents in just pure bodies and firepower. It's definitely a quantity over quality type of thing, because the las cannons, you know, just
the humble las gun. It's not stopping! Why is it stopping?
Yeah, by today's standards, they blow off limbs and powerful as shit, but by 40k, yes, it's pretty much like the worst weapon that you can have, and, but you know, million of them. When it comes to their aesthetic, they've got a sort of World War II vibe going on, but with a bit more modern, you know, armor. They've got the flak stuff that sort of protects them from fuck all. But yeah, I really like what they've got going on there. There are other armies in the Imperium, such as the Adeptus Mechanicus or the Sisters of Battle or even the Imperial Knights, but I don't think they're really suited for a new player to both play or paint because they are quite complex. Now let's move on to the armies of Chaos. Now, in 40k,
hell is real.
And yeah, I pretty much took that line from Bricky, but it's, you know, it's like exactly true. Like, hell is fucking real, and it's called the Warp. In the Warp, there are 4 godlike entities that are trying to corrupt and corrode and just ease their way into real space that, you know, most of us live in, or all of us live in. So let's just briefly go over, I guess, those 4 entities. So first we have Nurgle, or Papa Nurgle, as some like to call. Okay, I don't really know where I got to in the last take because I looked at the camera and I'm looking at the lens this time. You know, I'm trying to be a good presenter and not look at the viewfinder that's directly above it. So I didn't notice that it had stopped recording because I've been talking for like half an hour. Yeah, I lost like half of what I've just said. So I need to start again. And then I realized I lost even more from this thing that stopped recording because it was low on battery. So great. Really need a new camera, for fuck's sake. Anyways, back to where I think it cut out in the audio. So yeah, I've got like over half of the video to do again. So we have Papa Nurgle. Now I'm really enjoying fighting in the Hordes of Darktide right now. So yeah, everyone's sort of getting more familiar with Nurgle, but he is a being of pure pestilence and disease. And if you come like anywhere within a continent of one of his plague bearers or his plague guardsmen or just plague guard, whatever they're called, you will be spewing whatever is inside you, like food or not, just out of both ends. Like, yeah, you're not going to have a good time. Khorne. Now, Khorne is the blood god. He is a being of violence and fury incarnate. He sits upon his brass throne on top of a mountain of literal skulls.
This seems like a nice future. Let's just stay here. We can settle down on that mountain of skulls.
He has one thing and desires one thing only, and that's that the blood never stops. Zeech? I don't really know how to pronounce this one. And I don't really know too much about this god either, so I'm just going to read like straight from the wiki. Also known as the Changer of Ways, the Lord of Change, Lord of Sorcery, and the Architect of Fate. Among many other names and titles is the Chaos God of change, evolution, mutation, intrigue, ambition, knowledge, sorcery, destiny, lies, and trickery. Zeech is especially empowered by the desire for change and ambition for advancement among mortals. Wizard? Now moving on to Slaanesh, and Slaanesh is the newest god amongst the Chaos beings and is the 4th and final one, and was quite literally fucked into being. I'm gonna get so demonetized. Wait a minute, nobody watches these and I don't make money from these, so I can do this shit all day. Anyways, yeah, Slaanesh is the epitome of debauchery and depravity. She was literally orgasmed into being from the absolute atrocities that the Aeldari were committing. When she came into being, she literally reached out to every single Aeldari soul out there and just got her little clutches on it, and now she's claimed every single one, current, past, or future. The Craftwells, you know, she's a little hair, but we'll get onto those later. And this is important because now we're going to talk about the Eldar. I should really call them Aeldari because I'm still stuck in like that 2000s mindset where they were literally just called the Eldar. So anyways, the Aeldari, they're split into 2 main factions. The first being the Craftworld, and these are sort of like the almost good guys. You know, they're clean, they have that very Protoss aesthetic from StarCraft, and you'll probably make a few connections here between StarCraft and 40k. You have like the Space Marines, which are pretty much the Terrans. You've got the Protoss, which are the Aeldari or the Eldar, and then you have the Zerg, which are the Tyranids, which we'll get onto later. But anyways, the Craftworld guys, they were sort of like tucked away in their own pocket universe. So Slaanesh, when she was, you know, fucked into being, she just, thank you. She literally just a slither, you know, like just, I don't really know the implications of that, but yeah, you know, just like, hey, I've got your soul. Do you want to, you just, so yeah, they're very similar to the Protoss in their sort of aesthetic. They're like space elves, technologically advanced, and, you know, they play very much like a glass cannon. And if they're glass cannons, the Dark Eldar, or the Drukhari, are even more so. They hit like a fucking truck, but if you just so much as just slap them with a salmon, they will fall over and die. But at the same time, you don't really want to be on the receiving end of them because, again, according to the lore, they have, like, their souls are literally just clutched by Slaanesh, and they can feel this. And the only way, in order to stave off her grip on their soul, is they have to capture as many people as possible. They torture, and they rape, and they commit absolute unspeakable atrocities onto them. And when they're done with them, I think it's like 17, 20 years or whatever of like just absolute misery and pain. The only thing you can feel is pain. They just turn them into furniture. See my wall of faces over there? Used to be some guardsmen. See this nice chair? Used to be an orc. You know, they will just do that because it's like, hey, Slaanesh, like, I know you got my soul. And I know you like my soul, but here, have some like misery and pain and torment for a while. You know, they'll just tide you over whilst I live a little bit longer, please. Yeah, okay, we good. I'll go get some more. Okay. Fucking hell, that got dark really quick. Next up, we have the Tyranids. Like I was saying, with like the correlations and the lines you can draw between StarCraft and Games Workshop stuff, these guys are pretty much Zerg. You know, they don't really have an agenda other than, I just want to come to your planet and om nom nom. Like, they will move into a place. They will just come to your planet, eat everything. They will grow, and they will then consume and move on to the next one. And that's all they want to do. So it's really hard to like just say anything about them. They don't really have notable characters, and their play style is just very much, here's a horde. They got some guns, not many, but they got, you know, some weird things. They got some blades, and arguably the Gene Stealer cults are more interesting, but like I don't really know much about them, so I'm going to skip over them entirely. Next, we come to the sort of good guys in the 40k universe, and that's the Tau. Now, when these guys were introduced, I was maybe 12, 11, I don't know. When were they introduced? So yeah, they were released in 2001. I was 11, so just before I really started the hobby. These are supposedly the good guys of the 40k universe, but not really, because they believe in something called the greater good, right? The greater good. And they believe that all beings should come together and work together for this greater good. The greater good. To achieve harmony and balance in the universe and all that Avatar spiritual shit, right? The problem is that if you say no, they will point their guns at you. It's really like an interesting sort of dynamic. They are almost like religious zealots in a way that they will try and reach out to you first, and they'll be like, hey, we've got this thing called the greater good. Do you want in? You know, it's a really cool thing, and we think you should be part of it, and you should be part of it. Yeah, they're the good guys in that they will reach out and like open lines of communication and try to and try diplomacy, really is the thing. But at the same time, they don't, because they've only got one goal, and that's for you to join them. What I really like about them is they've got this really cool like anime aesthetic going on. They're like the Gundams of the 40k universe, and I was really close to picking Tau as the army that I was going to play, because I remember being a kid and seeing them all over like the White Dwarf magazines, and they had this weird sandy sort of colour scheme back then. Prefer the white colour scheme that's more normal these days, but you know, I thought they were cool, and I really wanted some, but I just never picked them up. I thought, hey, Tyranids are cool and spiky. I know I've missed out quite a few before we get to the final race. Like, we do have like the Leagues of Votan that have just recently been re-released as squats, but yeah, we're not really going to go into those because I don't know enough about them. So finally, we come to the army that I have chosen to start collecting in my 30s, and that's Orks. The Orks are like the comic relief in the 40k universe. They are pretty much like London Orks guys thing, you know, well, pretty much everything's London because Games Workshop's a British company, but you know, they're there for comic relief. And when they are depicted in artwork, they do look kind of scary, like this just absolute massive green horde coming towards you that are big and scary and with big teeth and just roaring at you. But when you see them in action, when you look at some of their games and how they speak and just like how they act towards each other, they're really just there for comic relief, and I love that. You know, they don't care that Timmy next door has a really cool Xbox and you don't, because they'll just go around to Timmy's house. They will hit Timmy with that Xbox and they will collect him his teeth, literally his teeth, and they will go buy a bigger axe because they got other things to do and they need a bigger axe to go kill the bigger things. So yeah, orcs are very much just like there for fun, and that's what I really want, and that's what I love, and I love their aesthetic. The things that they use and that they build, they work. They only work because they believe it works. You know, you could have a gun that is literally just like, I don't know, plank of wood with, you put some bullets in the top and you think, oh, this is going to shoot, and it shoots because that orc believes it shoots. And you could have a truck and it has no fuel, and the orc never went to like driving school. The orc doesn't know how to drive, but he believes he knows how to drive. So it works. And that's the fun thing about the orcs. You can come up with these ridiculous scenarios and they will work if you roll high. That is the good thing about playing them, is you can't be salty because you're leaving your game essentially up to RNG. You roll high, you roll sixes, you will shoot twice. You roll fives, maybe you hit them, I think. I don't know. But if you roll low, you will get up to some shenanigans. Like, if you roll low, if you're wanting to heal one of your boys because he's, you know, took a wound, and your guy's like, hey, I can fix it up, and the boy's like, okay, you're like, put your knife in, you know, come fix me up, boy. And then you roll a 1. That medic will kill that orc instead of just nothing happening. It's just absolute shenanigans, and that's why I chose them to be my faction in my mid-30s. Oh shit, I'm near my mid-30s. I'm 32, not mid-30s, early 30s. I really was torn between like choosing the Tau because I was like obsessed with them when I was a kid, and because they were the new thing, and the Orcs. But the absolute silliness of the Orcs just won me over in the end. Like, they're so, I think they're just adorable.
Get off my ship, Space Marine!
So yeah, with that being said, I went out, I bought a box of Boyz, and let's get building. Now, I have to admit, there isn't much reading material that comes with the basic Boyz box. I think they're going through a bit of a design change within Games Workshop these days, so this might be a box of old models. I believe if you get the Combat Patrol, you get a bunch of push-fit new Orc models, so I will maybe get those one day, but for now, you know, I've got to put these things together. On opening, it was a bit overwhelming because there were all these parts and way more than you think you'll need to build a box of 11 Boyz, and the instructions are a bit, let's say, light on the reading. Sure, I can put stuff together, but I have no idea if it's tabletop legal without buying the stupid expensive codex, so for now I'm just going to slap it all together and really just hope for the best. Now, the last 2 videos I put together and painted easy things, you know, in the grand scheme of things. The Space Marines were simple to assemble, it didn't have a lot of parts, and the Warrior of Gondor was even simpler so. You just had the guy, you put it in the base, and all you're done. The Orc Boy, on the other hand, fuck, oh my god. There are so many options and parts in this pack that come on this sprue. It's ridiculous. I literally had no idea where I should have started, honestly. I spent about 4 or 5 hours just planning and cutting and cleaning, and this was something I didn't really remember doing when I was a kid. When I was a kid, right, I bought something and it come on the sprue and I got my snips, and if they were close enough to the sprue, that was it. That was good enough. That was done. You know, no one's going to get close enough to look at my shitty paint job and be like, oh, there's a bit of sprue there. Like, no, fuck it. It's close enough. Now I'm an adult and I've sort of in my OCD phase. I spent far too long just scraping up all those mold lines and making sure those sprues were cut perfectly and that it was nice and smooth. And yeah, that was a good 5 to 7 hours or however long it took. I put together one boy first as a sort of test before selecting which special variant I should choose. The box actually gives you a choice between a rocket dude and a big old machine gun, and I decided to go with the big shooter because it's a big shooter, you know, why not? When it came to assembling though, I quickly saw that the backpack, arms and weapon would make it extremely difficult to paint it all in one piece. And this was the same for most of the models that held a two-handed weapon, like out in front of them. So for these, I decided to blue tack over the joints so that when I've painted, or when I've primed and painted them all, there will still be some plastic left over to glue everything to. With the special ready for priming, I then turned to assemble the rest of the boys, and I guess this is the squad I've chosen. You'll notice that Da Boss is missing because I'm going to make him up in a separate video. You'll also notice that these orcs do not have slotted bases, and most of the models that I've ever made have been on this type of base. And by this type of base, I mean slots. So this means I'm going to have to attach them somehow, whether that be pinning or gluing. But first, I need to make up some better bases. So yeah, that's pretty much where the next video is going to be. I've never really done like a decent base before. I think going through some of my old Lord of the Rings stuff, I maybe tried with a bit of sand. But yeah, I really want to just give it a go and see how I can make these a little bit better and pleasing to the eye. So yeah, look forward to the next video where I make up some bases and just experiment a little bit with what I've got, and hopefully just come up with a non-boring base that's just like, oh, here's your base, done. Thank you so much for joining me again on my Warhammer journey. I really do appreciate it, and I apologize, it's been so long since the last video. I've had some considerable time off work over Christmas, but last week I was just out of action. I just needed time to relax and not really do anything. And this week I've been working on just cleaning the boys and getting them painted, so yeah. I really do appreciate every single view I get on these videos, and if you would like to see more, please hit that like button, that subscribe button, the usual stuff. If you feel like supporting me, you can go over to my Patreon, where I've sort of started to make it more relevant to what I'm doing now. Basically, you go over to Patreon if you want to support me some more and have more of these videos. Honestly, if you go there, it gives me a reason to not slack off, and it lets me know that what I am doing, people like and want to support it, so up to you. And speaking of Patreon, I have to thank my current only supporter, Test Pilot Pete. Thank you very much for supporting me in the last couple months. It's been fun to have your name on all the videos that I forgot to put on, so here you go. So yeah, everyone else, if you also want to be personally thanked, you know where to go. I will see you in the next one.